Monthly meeting of the Human Relations Commission. We'll start with roll call.
Commissioner Alasani.
Here.
Vice Chair Bichetti. Commissioner Chen.
Here.
Commissioner Morin. Here. Chair Onan.
Here.
Commissioner Savage.
Here.
Commissioner Stone.
Here.
Thank you.
Great. Are there any agenda changes, requests, or deletions? I think we are good. Oh, yes.
Yeah. Item number 4, Chair Onan.
Yes, but I thought we were still going to do it.
Okay,
We're just going to.
that's fine.
Okay.
I just wanted to check.
Okay. All right. And then if there are no other comments, okay, then we will do oral communications. And I do have one speaker card here. Is there anything else?
Is there any other speaker card?
This is from Kimberly Lunt. So it invites you to step up and speak into the microphone. And I think you have, is it 3 or 5 minutes?
5.
5 minutes.
Hi, good evening, Human Relations Commission. My name is Kimberly Lunt. I'm speaking on behalf of the Office of the City Clerk, the department within the city that handles recruitment for the boards and commissions. And I'm here tonight to let everyone in the audience know, as well as the commission know, that the city is seeking applicants for the Human Relations Commission, the Public Art Commission, and the Utility Advisory Commission. So the deadline for those applications are for this recruitment, the spring recruitment, is March 3rd, 2015. And each term is for 3 years, May 1st, 2015 through April 30th, 2018. The Human Relations Commission has 3 expiring terms for the spring recruitment. The Public Art Commission has 3 expiring terms, and the Utility Advisory Commission has 2 expiring terms. So the membership requirements for the Human Relations Commission is that each applicant must be a Palo Alto resident. For the Public Art Commission, each of the members of the Public Art Commission either shall be members of the Architectural Review Board or shall be professional visual artists educators, professional visual artist scholars, professional visual artist collectors, or those whose authorities and skills are known and respected in the community, and whenever feasible, who have demonstrated an interest in and have participated in the arts program of the city. The membership requirements for the Utility Advisory Commission is that each member of the commission shall be a utility advisor or a utility customer, or the authorized representative of a utility customer. 6 members of the commission shall at all times be residents of the city. If anyone has any interest or any questions regarding the board and commission recruitment, you can contact the Office of the City Clerk. Our information, some flyers are in the back, along with some applications for the 3 commissions that are open. And then additionally, our phone number is 650-329-2571. Thank you all.
Thank you, Kimberly. Oh, is there another speaker's card?
You can give it to her, but they won't do it now.
This is exciting. We don't usually have that many people speak to us. Okay, so are these oral communications for things that are not on the agenda?
This one was, but that one is for an agenda item.
So we have to wait till we
You
get to
have
that
to wait for
agenda
that
item.
one,
Okay,
please.
so this person, wait till we get to that agenda item, and then we will have you speak to us. Okay, so let's move on to our next order of business, which is approval of the January minutes. They were sent out by Mary. We all had a chance to comment on and approve them.
The Senior Summit minutes, yeah.
Oh, the Senior Summit minutes. Does anybody have any comments or questions about that?
Yeah,
Do I hear a motion to approve? Or
Yes, I have a comment. Just one spelling error on the name. You got it.
The regular meeting. This was for the Senior Summit. Thank you for sending me that.
Okay. All right, do I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make the motion.
And a second? Second. You have to turn on your microphone.
They were both there.
Second. All right. And take a vote. All in favor of approving the Senior Summit meeting minutes, please say aye. 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 Any oppose or abstain?
I abstain because I wasn't there.
Good job. Right. Good job, Mitty. And I think we are past.
He learned his lessons after that one time.
After that one time.
He only had to learn once.
You got to be there to vote on it. Okay. All right, I think then we've approved the minutes. Thank you again, Mary. You took excellent notes. All right, and then on to our next item, which we're so glad Hillary made it back in time. Let me just give a little context to our guest speaker, which is Hillary Gittleman, who is the Director of Planning and Community Environment. As you know, we have grappled with the question of whether the HRC has a potential role in the whole affordable housing issue, which is a very important but contentious issue here in the city. Last December, Commissioner Chen and I met with Hillary and Tim Wong just to run some ideas past them and, start a dialogue with them. They had some really good input and feedback for us, but we thought it'd be helpful if they came, or at least one of them, Hillary, came in person to kind of shed some light on a possible role for the HRC and give us some food for thought as we continue to try to define, where we could actually add some value into this very difficult discussion. So with that, I'll ask Hillary to come up and talk with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm Hillary Gittleman, the Planning Director, and I hope you'll indulge me. I just want to give you a little background about what the Planning Department does, and then maybe we can get to the question that Commissioners Onan and Chen posed to Tim Wong and myself at the end of last year about your own interest and role in affordable housing issues. So I've been with the city a little over a year, about a year and a half, and I oversee a department, planning and community environment. There are really four primary functions of the department. Current planning, which is processing of applications, long-range planning, forward-looking planning activities, transportation, and code enforcement. You didn't hear me mention housing there because it's really inherent in the current and long-range planning division of the department, as is our community development block grant program, which you're going to hear more about in a little bit. There's a team of about 35 professionals in the department with a wide range of skills and interests. We process a whole ton of applications that walk in the door. It's work that we have very little discretion over. What people apply for, we have to analyze and take through the city's process. But in the long-range planning and transportation realms, we have an opportunity to prioritize our work, or let really the city manager and the city council prioritize our work and work on projects and programs prospectively and try and take on issues that are of particular interest to the council and the community at a given time. So it's a long way of saying that that many of our programs, including our housing program, has two components to it. It's projects that are brought to us and that projects that we as the city can initiate. It's important that you understand that in our planning world, those are two different strains of thought. But as I mentioned, we have professionals in many disciplines. One of them is housing. Now, unfortunately, our housing expert, Tim Wong, has left the city to work with the city of Milpitas, where they build a whole ton of housing. He went on to greener pastures. He was able to parlay his experience here and the good name of Palo Alto and find a great new opportunity. But we're going to miss him a lot, and it leaves us with a gap to fill in our housing program. So that's by way of saying first that we're a little resource constrained at the moment in terms of staff resources. But I hope I can give you a little overview of what the program has in store for this coming year, and then talk a little bit about how you might want to intersect with that. So Tim worked almost full-time on housing issues. He spent the last year, as many of you know, working on an update to the city's housing element, one of the required elements of our comprehensive plan. In fact, it's the only element that really requires state approval, and we just earlier this year received state certification of the housing element, which was quite a triumph. Up until the last minute, I was sure something was going to go sideways because it can be so hard getting the housing elements approved through Sacramento. But Tim did a masterful job working with a citizens panel and with the City Council, the Planning Commission, and the Regional Housing Mandate Committee of the City Council in crafting a document that got through all of the hoops in Sacramento, and it will guide our housing policies for the next 7 or 8 years. A comprehensive plan is usually a long-term document. Ours is a 15-year document, but the housing element by state law is a 7 or 8 year planning document. So in developing the housing element, one of the components of that is a set of implementation tasks or programs that will be undertaken in the course of the 7-year planning period. Our housing element is no exception. There's a long list of things that we agreed to undertake in the coming years, and many of them are prioritized in the first few years of the program. As soon as we get Tim's replacement, and in fact even before we get a replacement for Tim, we're going to have to start tackling some of those things on the list for the first 2 years. One of them will be completing what's called a nexus study, looking at the relationship between job creation and the demand for affordable housing. So we've joined a consortium of cities, most of them in San Mateo County, who retain the services of a consultant, an economic consultant, that are studying the nexus between job creation and the demand for affordable housing. Once the study is complete, it gives us the information we need to go to our policymakers and talk about potential changes to our housing impact fees. Housing impact fees are the fees we collect on new development that are intended to offset somewhat their impact on housing demand. And the city amasses quite an amount of housing fees over time that we can spend on the rehabilitation or creation of affordable housing. So that's a big task for us. A nexus study is a big undertaking. As I said, we joined this whole consortium of other cities. We're a little at the mercy of the schedule of that whole consortium, but sometime this spring, we'll have a draft of the nexus study, and first stop will probably be to the finance committee of the city council, and then we'll engage in discussions, I think, with a wide variety of potential stakeholders, the Planning Commission and the City Council as a whole, to try and figure out what the data in that nexus study means in terms of potential policy changes having to do with impact fees. So that's a big task. Another task that we have to get started based on the housing element that was just implemented is a look at the potential changes to our zoning ordinance to facilitate merger of small parcels. A lot of the housing sites that we identify in our housing element are small mixed-use sites, and the housing advocates and the state, when they reviewed our draft, encouraged us to include a policy or a program around lot consolidation, and it's been prioritized as one of the first 2-year items that we have to undertake. So that's a zoning exercise. We're planners. We know how to do zoning, and that's on our to-do list in the next coming year. The other thing that will probably happen this year is last year we issued a notice of funding availability for the use of those affordable housing funds, and my expectation is we'll do the same again this year. Now, just to turn to your own interest and question about how your commission might be engaged in housing activities, when we met in December, Commissioner Chen, Chair Onan, and Tim and I, we talked about, in the course of our housing element preparation, we had a couple community workshops on housing issues that were incredibly informative. They were right at the beginning of our process, so it was partially to educate people about what our planning process was going to be, but more than that, it was to start to hear people's stories about housing and how people are coping with the high cost of housing in our community. And I'll tell you, the meetings were more catharsis than planning workshop. They were fantastic. People came and shared personal stories. And I found a lot of it very moving and motivational. I mean, it really set us to work on our housing element with a good head of steam behind us, because this has become a critical issue of our time. There are a lot of people with a great deal of insecurity about their housing, and housing costs are going up so fast that it's really, really an important issue. But in the course of those discussions, there were a couple ideas that were floated that are they're just a little bit outside of the planning realm. They're more in the realm of service that a nonprofit could deliver or some other entity could pursue. And I don't know whether you would like to investigate those with nonprofit partners or talk further about the ideas. But one of them was this idea of co-housing for seniors. We have so many seniors, as you know, our population is aging. We have seniors who are aging in large dwelling units. And though we have some great programs for seniors in Palo Alto, Avenidas does incredible work. In the course of these workshops, a few of the participants talked about a program in San Mateo County that facilitated sort of co-housing arrangements, and I really don't know anything about it. As I say, it falls a little bit outside of the realm of planners, but if you wanted to, kick the tires on an idea and do some homework on that issue, I'd be fascinated to learn what you find out. The other issue that kept surfacing at these workshops was about the tenants' rights kind of issues and how tenants are coping with increasing rents. And I know this would be a potentially controversial issue to tackle, but if your commission is meeting anytime soon in joint session with the council, and I think I did see that on the agenda soon. Yeah. I mean, you might want to ask the city council if something having to do with that issue is something that they would be interested in you investigating further. I think that would be the way to do that. But I know you probably have a lot of issues on your plate, but given the interest you've expressed in housing, those were two ideas that Tim and I thought might interest you for some further discussion. With that, maybe I should stop talking, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about our program, ways that we could work together, or any ideas or thoughts you have on this issue.
Does anyone have any questions for Hillary? Hillary, I was wondering, the renters' rights or tenants' rights, is there a comparable program in San Mateo County that we can investigate, or was that just a out-of-the-box idea?
Well, it came up at these workshops. It's really not a subject that I know much about. I could do, some digging, but I've just been pulled in so many directions recently. I haven't been able to do that. I'm apologizing. I apologize. I'm just raising this wild idea without any background.
No, I just wondered if it came up because people were aware of something in Alameda County or San Francisco County or somewhere else.
Yeah, it was really the other issue where people were aware of a program that already existed in another jurisdiction. And they mentioned San Mateo County. So this idea of co-housing and putting seniors together who are living separately and seeing if they can arrange to cohabitate.
Okay. Yeah. Commissioner Al-Hassani?
Thank you. Are there a couple of broad questions? Do you know of projects in the works now in affordable housing in Palo Alto that are near completion, or are there any in the pipeline?
Off the top of my head, we don't have any 100% affordable projects, but we do have some projects that are. Oh, actually, I take that back. There is that project on El Camino, the Stanford project on El Camino that was part of the Mayfield Development Agreement that's moving forward. In fact, there was an item on the council agenda last week just to finalize some of the documents. So there's that affordable housing project, and then there are a number of market rate projects that have affordable units within them that are moving through the process or that were approved in the last year and are moving towards construction.
Do you know where Palo Alto stands in ballpark of our percentage of affordable housing units as a whole, number of housing units, and how we compare with other places?
I don't, I'm afraid. If you're interested in the statistics on either our current housing stock or our population in terms of income level and diversity, the first section of the housing element that was just certified by the state has a lot of information on those metrics and on housing need in our community. And I'm just not familiar enough with the data to cite it off the top of my head.
And just the last thing I was going to ask is, are there things you saw at Berkeley or other places that Palo Alto doesn't do that might be things you would recommend we look into as well? On this specific issue.
I can't think of any. I mean, Palo Alto has historically had a really robust affordable housing program. Over time, the city's constructed a lot of affordable housing. This came up, in fact, when the Planning Commission was talking about planned community zoning reform, and Consuelo can tell you more about that, but I wasn't at last night's hearing, but when we talked about it earlier, at the end of last year, it became apparent, like, this tool that everybody thinks is problematic has been used to create a ton of affordable housing. And there's been a lot of housing created over the years in Palo Alto that's deed restricted as affordable. Really a very successful program over the years.
Are you guys concerned that with the reform, this is going to hinder our ability to continue?
Well, we did identify in the housing element that the current kind of timeout, the breather we're taking on PC reform is a constraint on housing, and that and we committed to the state in our housing element that we would continue to work through this period of, designing a reform to the program and get to the end of that period. So I'm glad we're working ahead on that.
Thanks so much.
Other questions? Commissioner Chen?
I have a specific question. Regarding tenants' rights, it's such a broad topic. Any specific area of tenants' right that you recommended we look into? Like low income or extremely low income?
Yeah, I apologize. Maybe I shouldn't have thrown that big term or that big topic out there for you. I just raise it because it was definitely raised by the public when we had these workshops.
Right.
I don't really, it's not really my area of expertise. So it would take some investigation on your part, and I think some thought. And I really would encourage you to talk to the city council before embarking on a big project like that. See if it's an interest of theirs that you could pursue.
I did want to mention that as part of our HRC oversight, we work with the Palo Alto mediation program, and there is a law, an ordinance in Palo Alto that when landlords, I think it's evict or send a notice of eviction, that they have to notify the tenant that there is a 60-day appeal process, and it's called mandatory response. And a lot of landlords do not comply with that, and tenants are not always aware of their rights in Palo Alto. So that is one issue alone that's already kind of under our purview, so to speak, because we oversee the Palo Alto mediation program, and they notify landlords of that law and try to ensure compliance and help mediate landlord-tenant disputes. So it could be that tenants' rights could build off of something like that that's already in existence here in Palo Alto.
It sounds like even that, getting the word out about the existing ordinance would be a great service.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Other comments? Commissioner Snow?
Yeah, you mentioned several ways that the Human Relations Commission could get involved on this issue. What do you personally think would be the best use of the HRC, where we could really make a difference?
Well, I hate to dodge that question, but I think we've encouraged the Planning Commission when they meet in joint session with the council to ask the council for their thoughts about how they can be most effective and what they can focus on. I would encourage you to do the same when you have that opportunity in joint session. It's far more important to ask them that question than me.
I resonate to the term co-housing because as an ancient Berkeley person, co-housing has a history to it. And I know that attempts were made both in the Berkeley area, which were successful, in San Francisco, and then I know of a group here who tried to do it, but it was limited by finances to find an area that's big enough for a co-housing group, be it seniors or otherwise. It's difficult. So did any of those sorts of issues arise? This is new and exciting to me.
There actually was someone who was on our community panel advising us during the housing element update process who had some experience with co-housing as a development technique. What was raised at these community workshops was something a little different. It was more like a service, that would link seniors up with each other so that they could potentially move in together to existing housing rather than developing new housing. The term co-housing is often, refers to a development strategy where you're developing housing where people have independent units but share a kitchen and the like. So that's a little different than what I was referring to.
Thank you.
I also wanted to ask Hillary about co-housing, but maybe in a slightly different vein. When I attended some of the workshops around housing last summer, there were people saying that there is an ordinance where, for example, people cannot rent out part of their house or I'm not sure exactly how the ordinance is structured, but they can't rent out part of their home if their lot is under a certain size. And there were a number of people saying, I'm a senior, I need the income, I'd love to rent to a student or somebody. I could make, I could live much better if I could rent out this unused part of my property, but the city won't let me do it, and now I'm going to have to leave my home. So did that come up for you? Because I heard several seniors comment on that.
Well, that's interesting. I think maybe there's some confusion around, how you rent out rooms. You are limited to the number of dwelling units you can have on your property, and there's a whole, kind of definition of dwelling unit is something that has a kitchen usually. So you can't divide your house into multiple apartments by adding a bunch of kitchens and rent out those rooms with kitchens. But you can rent out a bedroom in your house on a long-term basis. So I think people can do that, and there's no limitation on that because we can't really control, as long as it's not a separate apartment. It's a shared situation.
Now, is that for safety, or is that just to prevent too many people living in a space?
It's a land use control. It's about the density of housing.
Okay, because I think there was some pushback from the community that at least some people would like to see that eased up, at least in the case of, say, seniors or someone who's financially challenged who really needs to be able to convert, say, an in-law unit into a separate apartment that's rentable. And I know when I was a Stanford student, lived in an illegal studio that had no kitchen, and now I know why. So that is so cool. But yeah, so I just wonder, is advocating or investigating and possibly advocating for some more flexibility there a role for us, or is that something we should leave to staff, city?
Yeah, that's really a planning issue. It came up in the housing element update. I think we do have a policy about looking for ways to encourage additional second units, legal second units, and that's often comes up as an alternative. People suggest that if we develop a lot of additional second units, we wouldn't have to develop multifamily housing projects. In truth, it's not really mutually exclusive. It'd be great if we could do both things. But I think there is something in our housing element about looking at making it a little easier to develop the second units.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for Hillary? I had one more thing, but now I'm spacing on what it was. I don't know if I'll remember in time.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and we're posting Tim's job, so if you know of any great housing people who want to work for the city of Palo Alto, send them my way.
I did remember the one last thing I wanted to ask. I live in South Palo Alto, and along the El Camino corridor are a number of businesses that have been shuttered for more than a decade. They're just sitting empty buildings. It's quite an eyesore. And when I had mentioned this to Tim Wong, he said that there was really no way for the city to penalize these property owners or landlords, that there's no disincentive. And I'm wondering because it's a blight on South Palo Alto. I mean, it's really very noticeable in certain sections of El Camino. And I'm wondering, is it true that there's no disincentive programs or ways to encourage people not to just shutter their businesses and leave them vacant year after year? Because that just seems like such a waste of an opportunity to me. And I see it every single day because that's where I live.
Yeah, I'd love the information on the properties you're talking about.
Yeah, like the old Compadres restaurant. I don't know if anybody lives down there. Compadres restaurant was a hot spot in the 80s. It got shuttered, I think, in the late 90s, so it's maybe 15 years now that it's been sitting empty.
I think there is a development proposal for that site, so it may be that the owner is,
there's an old auto shop, Combs Auto, that's right just south of Page Mill, that's been sitting for over 20 years vacant. So that's why I just wondered if there's opportunities to reach out to those owners. And I believe I have read that there are communities that levy taxes and fines and so forth if you create an eyesore, which some of these properties, in my view, really are. I don't know if that's just another area that we could explore.
I'd have to look into the specific circumstances. It's, people have, property owners have a right to use their property or not use their property. So there are some limitations on what we can do, but I'd have to look into the specific circumstances.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Hillary. I'm glad we made it to the meeting tonight. All right. Okay. So we will have some food for thought and probably need to talk more about this issue at our next meeting. So think it over. Everybody sleep on it, and then we'll talk about it soon. All right. Our next order of business is the recommendations to the Finance Committee for the CDBG funds, which is Community Development Block Grant. And are we going to start with a staff report? Okay.
Good evening, Chair Onan, members of the
and wait a minute.
HRC.
And when do we do the oral communications? After?
After our presentation.
So if you want to remind people if they want to.
Oh, yeah. If anyone wants to speak to us about this agenda item, please fill out a speaker card and give it to Mary here at the front. And then we'll call on you after the presentation and you can speak to us.
Ready for us?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Good evening, Consuelo Hernandez, Senior Planner in the Advanced Planning Section. I'm introducing Matt. I know that some of you met him when we had the selection committee, and then back in November, December, when we gave you a preliminary presentation on the consolidated plan, I also introduced Matt. And so he's actually going to be giving the presentation for tonight, and then I'll be here to support him with any questions.
Thank you, Consuelo. Good evening, Commissioners. Matt Weintraub, Planner, CDBG Coordinator. I'll provide some background information tonight on the CDBG program before reviewing the Selection Committee's recommendations. The City of Palo Alto receives annual funding from HUD as an entitlement city under the Community Development Block Grant Program. CDBG is the principal federal program that provides grants to improve physical, economic, and social conditions, primarily for persons of low and moderate income. Activities funded through CDBG must meet one of three national objectives. Number one, benefit low and very low income persons. 2, aid in prevention or elimination of slums or blight. And 3, meet other community needs that are particularly urgent for the low income community. All of the activities funded by the City of Palo Alto meet the first objective, which is to benefit low and very low income persons. On February 11th, 2015, which was yesterday, HUD notified the city of its fiscal year 2015-2016 CDBG entitlement. The final CDBG entitlement amount is $442,460. That is $43,242 more than was anticipated, or more than we estimated in our original budgeting. The additional unplanned entitlement amount represents a 10.8% increase over the previously estimated CDBG entitlement, or the estimate that we used with the selection committee, and a 5.2% increase in total available funds for the fiscal year, including the program income and the funds from previous years. So the total estimated funding available for allocation in fiscal year 2015-2016 is $881,674. Just so you know, you do have a sheet in front of you that has all these numbers in front of it, so you don't have to write them down. Now that total of $881,674 consists of the final entitlement grant of $442,460. It also includes estimated program income of $136,049 and $303,164 in prior year resources. So Palo Alto has 5 funding categories in which to allocate funds: public services, planning and administration, economic development, housing, and public facilities. According to federal regulations, public services have a maximum spending cap of 15% of the entitlement grant and 15% of actual program income received during the previous fiscal year. Therefore, the maximum that can be allocated for public services for fiscal year 2015-16 is $82,910, and you do see that number on your updated budget sheet. Similarly, planning and administration, which includes the administrative costs associated with managing the CDBG program, has a 20% spending cap placed on the entitlement grant and program income from the following fiscal year. Therefore, the maximum that can be allocated for planning and administration in fiscal year 2015-16 is $115,702. There is no cap placed on the other 3 funding categories. HUD requires the preparation of a 5-year strategic plan of action referred to as a consolidated plan to address the priority housing and community development needs and to set goals for attaining identified objectives. The draft 2015-2020 consolidated plan is currently under development for submittal to HUD by May 15th, 2015. The primary objectives include the preservation of existable affordable housing units, supporting activities to end homelessness and provide community services to special needs populations, strengthening neighborhoods, promoting fair housing choice, and expanding economic opportunities for low-income households. A one-year action plan is required outlining the activities that will implement the strategies identified in the consolidated plan. Currently, the CDBG program operates under a 2-year funding request cycle, and fiscal year 2015-16 is the first year in the funding cycle. Funding allocations are now required. The HRC Selection Committee met on January 29, 2015, and made funding recommendations, which are provided as Attachment C of the staff memo. In addition, staff has prepared an update to the funding recommendations based on the final CDBG entitlement from HUD, which includes additional unplanned funds. Staff proposes that the additional unplanned funds be distributed according to the following contingency adjustment, which is generally consistent with the strategy that was discussed with the selection committee on January 29th. So, in the public services category, which has a 15% cap, each applicant is recommended to receive an additional amount which represents the applicant's proportional share of funds originally recommended for allocation within the category, up to the amount requested. So if there was a 10% increase in funds available under that category, each agency is recommended for a 10% increase based on their original allocation. In the planning and administrative category, Project Sentinel is recommended to receive an additional amount, bringing them up to the total amount requested, and with the remainder applied to city administration. And in the remaining categories, housing and economic development, the 2 remaining applicants are recommended to receive the remainder of the additional funds split evenly. So in summary, in terms of how the overall available funds are proposed to be divided, or how the pie is being cut, if you will, the recommended funding allocations to the individual agencies are generally consistent with the funding allocations that they've received in the previous 2 fiscal years, again, proportionally. In terms of the actual amounts that are proposed to be received, they're a little greater than the 2013-24 allocations generally, and a little less than the 2014-15 allocations generally, again, based on the total available funds. So in conclusion, staff recommends that the Commission open the public hearing and take public comment, and recommend that the Finance Committee and the City Council approve the HRC Selection Committee recommendations for fiscal year 2015-16, incorporating the budget adjustments that are finally determined to be recommended by the Commission. Thank you, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Matt. So, Mika, do we move into the oral communications now? Oh, do I have to gavel? Okay, I wanted to. Okay.
Chair Onan, I also just wanted to add, you asked a question of us in November of setting priorities. This would be the time to do it. If the HRC believes that there is an agency or a specific service that is more beneficial, and or you would just like to prioritize that, this is the time to do it over the next 5 years.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, we'll now hear oral communications from the public. And again, if you want to speak to us, you have to fill out one of these cards and give it to staff. The name I have is Jeff Somerville. Could you please come forward? And you'll have 5 minutes to speak to us.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. Thank you. I first wanted to express my appreciation for the opportunity to apply. So my name is Jeff Somerville. I work with Midpen Housing. I'm a portfolio manager. Our project is Palo Alto Gardens. We submitted a CDBG application to fund some rehab items at the property, specifically for accessibility improvements for our senior population, as well as some landscape and irrigation improvements to improve the water efficiency of the property, as water bills have become extremely high at the property and represent a significant amount of the budget there. I just wanted to share with you a little bit more about Midpen Housing and Palo Alto Gardens. It is a deed-restricted, affordable housing property that serves very low-income seniors and families here in the city of Palo Alto. It is one of the precious affordable housing assets that were briefly mentioned earlier today, and so these resources will significantly preserve this asset and help its ongoing maintenance and operations into the future. With this money, we hope to significantly reduce the operations budget, and then that money goes directly to continue to support the property. And Mid-Penn Housing, we've been around since 1970. We're a nonprofit affordable housing developer. We've developed over 90 properties, thousands of units throughout the Bay Area. Most of our properties are in San Mateo County and Santa Clara County. We're happy to be here, and we're looking forward to working with you and implementing a great project. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I just wondered, can I ask just one quick question? Can you remind us where Palo Alto Gardens is in the city?
Yes, it is on San Antonio Road.
On Sand Hill Road?
San Antonio Road.
Oh, San Antonio Road. Okay. Thank you. Right. Then we'll hear our next speaker, Maria.
Hi, good evening. Maria Marroquin is my name, and thank you so much for having me here and see some of you again for the opportunity to ask you just to found the Day Worker Center of Mountain View. We have a wonderful organization who has been helping communities since '96. And now I invite you to be part of this successful organization and just share your money with the Day Worker Center of Mountain View. So we help the city of Mountain View. We help your residents. We provide services to your employers, to residents here. And also the idea is just to work in partnership with the Palo Alto streets, down the streets, and just connect the people who is looking for work with our organization too. So I believe it's really great opportunity to continue improving our community if you support us. And we're just asking for 10,000.
Thank you, Maria. Are there anyone else? Oh, some more cards. I had a feeling that there were more people that wanted to speak. All right. And our next speaker will be Adriana Caldera. And you'll have 5 minutes. Thank you so much.
I'll try to keep it under 5 minutes. So my name is Adriana Caldera. I'm with the YWCA Silicon Valley and the Domestic Violence Department. I just wanted to say thank you for your recommendation and for your continued support of our program. I did want to let you know that thanks to your funding, we were able to leverage additional funding to expand some of the services happening at our emergency shelter. And this next year, we're going to be able to pilot a rapid rehousing program for up to 15 families that are exiting our emergency shelter. So this will allow them to help with being able to secure safe, affordable, permanent housing. So I just wanted to say thank you again for your support.
You're very welcome. Thank you for speaking to us tonight. All right, and our next speaker will be Chad Bajorquez. I'm sorry, my Spanish is not good.
Is it okay to talk from here, or do you need it to
No, it's totally fine.
Okay. Hi, I'm Chad with Downtown Streets team. Nothing major to say, but just want to express our continued gratitude for our workforce development work here in Palo Alto. This is where we started. We have a thriving program here helping homeless and extra low income individuals in their employment goals. We've made a lot of progress over the last 2 years, digging deeper into our employer relationships and building partnerships at a regional level with local employers so that we have the kind of relationship where when our team members apply, we have a contact person at each location that we can say, hey, so-and-so just applied, please just make sure they don't get lost in the shuffle, right? Like, we're not asking for you to change your HR policy or anything like that, but just please make sure that you take a good look at this person. And that's resulted, so far, if everything goes as planned, as of today, we have 23 out of the 30 jobs that is our outcome goal lined up here in Palo Alto. And I'm sure that we'll meet or exceed that goal if continued. So really just wanted to express gratitude, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Chad. Thank you for speaking to us. Are there any other people who'd like to speak tonight? All right, then I think we will go ahead and open it up for discussion. If anyone has questions of Matt or anything else they want to comment on? Commissioner Al-Hassani?
Do you guys have the applications with you by any chance?
I don't have them with me here. I have them upstairs. So if we really need to look at them, I can get them. Okay.
Well, and
Betty,
that was actually...
if you want to ask the question, we can try to answer it.
Can I review the application? Can I see the application?
Yeah, that was actually my question too. I was a little concerned about the blank spot next to the Day Worker Center of Mountain View, and I don't know enough about the program or what the application was. So I'm just wondering if the selection committee can kind of enlighten us. And
I can start the conversation and see who wants to.
Yeah, I think the selection committee's recommendation of not funding Day Worker Center Mountain View is definitely not indicative of our feelings that the Day Worker Center is not doing a great job. I think we were all very impressed by what they were doing for the city of Mountain View. And I think that was a big reservation, at least for myself, was that I was seeing a lot of help with Mountain View, the people of Mountain View, but we were, I think, missing the nexus between the Day Worker Center and Palo Alto, and being able to see exactly how the people of Palo Alto were going to be benefiting from those services. And so I think just it wasn't proven enough to us that it was helping Palo Alto residents, and I think that was the major concern. I do think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we try to do something that for the next funding cycle or the second half that it would be open.
Yes, the selection committee did make comments that they felt that the applicant should consider applying for funds in the second year of this funding cycle, which they could do because they do have an application in during the 2-year funding cycle. And there were, the selection committee asked them to further develop their program and look at ways that they can verify that they're actually meeting the needs of the Palo Alto population, and that information can be verified and reported. And I believe there was also a request to sort of solidify the potential partnership with other organizations such as Downtown Streets and maybe provide more details on how that would work.
That's exactly our recommendation. Yeah, you guys did a good job, but we want to see, in the future that you have blossomed even more.
I just have one question about that. Do we have an approximate percentage of the number of Palo Altans who are helped through the Day Worker Center?
Yeah, we have 10% of our employers are from Palo Alto, and we have residents also who are living in the city of Palo Alto, so workers. There's another question that you can come up here, Maria. That'd be great.
yeah, this was a concern of mine because I live on the border with Mountain View and Palo Alto, and many of my neighbors use workers from the Day Worker Center, and there's a tremendous amount of traffic that's, people are working and living in our city, and I just hope we're not creating an artificial barrier, because in my experience it's very fluid there. But I don't know, I'm trusting on the selection committee because I don't have the background that they have, and I'm not sure what the details of the program were. And I don't know if, Maria, if you have some more details that you could provide to help kind of clarify that nexus that Commissioner Stone mentioned between Mountain View and Palo Alto.
Well, actually, we have been doing this, just placing workers from different parts of the city who lives in Mountain View. We have also workers who come from as far as San Jose, even Gilroy. And we have workers who come from East Palo Alto and even Palo Alto just looking for work. And we place these workers in different cities. Palo Alto is one of the great source of employers. And also the idea just to approach and start working with the group like my colleagues are here is just to place people who is looking for a home. Also, some of the times or most of the times is because they don't have work. They don't have home. They don't have work. So trying to alleviate in some way that part and be more active, just proactively looking for more employers here in this town. And of course, if we have more employers here, we are going to connect more people who are here. In this case, would happen like via homeless.
So do you have an existing partnership with Downtown Streets?
Well, very informal, very informal. I have the pleasure to speak with our executive director, and Chad already went to visiting us. And it's our plan, just start coming and attending their meetings that I know they meet on Thursdays, just to make a strong connection with that.
Okay.
With them.
Chair Onan, if I can just add, one of the from a staff perspective, one of the requirements from HUD is that the projects that you recommend for funding are ready to receive the funds and are ready to execute their programs.
I see.
We do have a timeliness test that we have to meet, and that's why our recommendation was to possibly delay making a recommendation for the 2 years and maybe give them this extra time to work through a potential partnership with DST and also work with staff on preparing them so that next year when they come back to the HRC, you have more information, and then we can also demonstrate to you that they would be in fact ready to receive the funding.
Okay, so what I'm hearing then is that this is a very interesting idea, but it's not ripe yet. It needs to be a little bit more ripe to adhere to the federal requirements and so forth. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah, it could be one piece of that is not really ripe, but the other part is already successful and working.
Okay. Okay. All right, anyone else have any questions or comments about the funding recommendations? Commissioner Al-Hassani, you look like you want to say something.
Are there any stipulations about first-time applicants getting funding? Could this be the first time we fund them, correct?
Yes, it would be the first time Palo Alto would fund them, and it would also be the first time they'd be recipients of CDBG funds. Mountain View currently funds them, but not under the CDBG program. Okay. It's more similar to HISRAP.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of federal regulations that they have to comply with, and there isn't sufficient time to really determine if they're ready for that.
Okay. And then, Maria, you had just mentioned that one part of the program was already ripe. So what part of that is ripe?
The correct job placement that we have with Palo Alto.
Okay, the job placement
The
part.
job placement, yeah.
Okay. Okay. And so, Matt and Consuelo, does the job placement aspect comply with federal regulations, or is it still a little bit too loose for regulatory compliance?
It's not necessarily the program itself that's of concern. It's the readiness of the agency and the program.
Okay. Okay. All right. All right. Well, I have to admit, I love it when we have more money than we thought we did. And I don't know. I guess I would love to see a way to give some seed money to the Day Worker Center to at least help them get started. But I don't know. I mean, again, I wasn't on the selection committee, and I know that these applications have been very carefully reviewed and vetted, so I don't want to override it, or suggest, something that doesn't make sense, and I'm speaking out of turn or anything like that. But I have to admit that I love to give, new programs a chance when I think they can really do some good for the community. I don't know if that's a possibility or whether it is better to stick with the recommendation to encourage the Day Worker Center to reapply in the second year of the funding cycle when they have things a little more concrete. But I just want to say that I totally support the work there, and that I hope that one way or the other it will work out. Does anyone else have any thoughts on that, or does anyone else who was on the selection committee want to speak to that? Any thoughts or concerns or reservations you have? Commissioner Stone?
To address your point, I agree. I think it was difficult for the sub-selection committee to make that determination, to not give funding to this great organization. But again, I think because I kept hearing it's been helping employers in Palo Alto, and I remember that was a point made in the application and in your very well articulated presentation at the meeting as well. But I don't think we're quite as concerned with the employers of Palo Alto benefiting. At least I wasn't as much through this as the people who were being employed, and I think that's what we're more concerned about. So not being able to see that connection, still not being able to see the proof, and then what Consuelo was able to say about the federal regulations that we're not sure yet. I still am very confident with what we have now, and definitely urge for the second year to please reapply. And I hope at that time that it would be timely.
This is exactly my idea too, because we want to see what happened that you collaborate with a downtown street team. And one of concern that I had was that in terms of transporting the workers from here to the employers in Palo Alto, how are we going to do that? So if we could see something next year when we have good collaboration going on, things moving on, definitely we apply again.
Yeah, thank you.
And I just wanted to add, they actually don't physically have to submit a second application next year. Their application that they submitted is for 2 years. Okay. So they wouldn't have to go through the paperwork. We might ask them for additional information once they've had a chance to kind of work with Downtown Streets team and solidify their program and partnership.
Okay, all right, that makes a lot of sense. I would just encourage you, Maria, to be sure if you can document at all how many of your workers are living in Palo Alto. It will be such a help to us to know, because that strengthens that connection that we need to have with our community, because these are funds that are supposed to be used in our community, even though the communities are next door neighbors. So just if you can be aware of that and make sure those details get into any applications and reports that you give us.
Yeah,
All right,
thank you very much. Yeah, unfortunately, some of them lives in Buena Vista Park, so probably also they are going to be removed there. But
thank you, Maria.
thank you.
All right. Okay, so is there any further comments or discussion that we want to have on the CDBG funding?
I just wanted to express my gratitude to Consuelo and Matt. The staff report for this was really, really good and made life way easier for us.
Yes.
So thank you so much again.
Yes, thank you so much, Consuelo. So do we have a motion then to approve the funding, the recommended funding allocations as is?
I move to approve.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone who is opposed or abstain? All right, we have approved the CDBG funding allocation recommendations. Thank you, Matt and Consuelo.
And just to clarify, no specific funding requirements that you want, or priorities that you want to set for the next 5 years. You can set them if you'd like now.
Oh, okay. So do we do that formally?
You can, or you can just inform staff of that. We will be sending you the draft consolidated plan via electronically, and we can provide you hard copies.
Okay.
We're hoping to release that early next week.
Okay.
And you're not required to hold a formal hearing. Of course, we are happy to come and present the report to you if you'd like, but it's not required by HUD standards. The Finance Committee and the City Council will be reviewing that document.
Is that something that we could do at our next meeting, or will we be too late by March?
We can potentially do it for March. When is your meeting? I can confirm with Minka after tonight's meeting.
Okay, because I think that the idea we'd have a chance to think over what the priorities might be, and if anyone has input, we'd have a more robust discussion at that time.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Consuelo, and thank you, Matt. Very well done. And thank you, Selection Committee. You did an awesome job, and you explained your choices very, very articulately.
Yeah, I want to commend the subcommittee too. They came prepared, ready to have a great conversation, and thank you.
Yes, great job. All right. Our next item is a debrief on the Senior Summit and the formation of a senior subcommittee. Although you do not have to be a senior to be on the subcommittee, I just want to clarify that. So the Senior Summit was held in January. I'll just give a little background. I know many of you were there, or at least able to drop by for some of it, but it was born out of our human needs assessments, the full-blown one that we did in 2011 and 12, and then the supplemental one that we did in 2014. And we had many, many service providers who work with seniors in different aspects of their work, but often they don't have a chance to communicate and collaborate with each other. And it seemed to me that senior issues are really reaching a critical juncture in this community, because we have an unusually large number of seniors, and that population is growing rapidly as the boomers age into their senior years. I have been told by Avenidas and other major service providers that we're just not prepared for what's going to happen as this large population starts needing more and more services. And I thought it might be helpful if the HRC facilitated a conversation among all the local senior service providers to talk about what are some of the most critical and pressing needs and what are some potential solutions that we could advocate for. Also, I had a meeting with Supervisor Joe Simidian last summer where he had told me that there was potentially county money that could come to the North County, but we would need to start identifying some key programs and projects and possibly get the city to provide matching funds. And I think the senior service area is maybe a really good topic for that kind of joint funding. I think those are needs that everybody understands, and that Palo Alto is not immune, even though we're better off than other parts of the county, we're still not immune from service gaps, especially when serving that kind of a delicate population. So anyway, we had the senior summit, and we had a much larger attendance than we had expected, which was amazing. Councilmember Pat Burt attended much of the meeting, and then Mayor Holman arrived for sort of the tail end. I think what went really well from my perspective was that people shared what their issues were, and almost on the spot were able to start collaborating with each other around resources they didn't even know existed and connections that they didn't realize that they could make, and that was very exciting and helpful. And then there were some key issues that sort of floated to the top, and we broke out into small groups and discussed those. And I don't think that we were able, with the time that we had, to really do a deep dive into how we might explore solutions to those issues that were brought up. But as I talked with staff and with Councilmember Byrd and other people after the summit, I realized that it was just a really good first step. It wasn't the complete circle that I was hoping we'd sort of make, but I tend to be a little overambitious sometimes with these things. But it was a great first step, and I think what we need to do now is keep that momentum going, and what would be helpful would be to form a senior subcommittee that would go through all of the great input we got at that summit and try to come up with a handful of issues that we really think we can run with, whether that would be going to the city to request some funding for some new programs, going to the county, working with local service providers to help them collaborate on new solutions, and just really making sure that something comes out of that summit that's real and concrete and that will help serve the seniors in our community. There are some topics that I think we'd all probably agree need addressing, and probably the main one would be transportation. Seniors are very, very burdened with lack of transportation and lack of mobility. And then there are some other issues as well that I think we could tackle. So that would need maybe 2 or 3 people to agree to be on that committee. Hopefully some people who either attended the summit or are willing to read through Mary's incredibly well-documented notes. She just did an amazing job. You almost feel like you're there when you read her notes. And just really this will be kind of a long-term thing, because we'll be identifying issues, and then we'll probably have to go back out to our partner agencies and do some focus groups and get some more input from them, and then figure out financing and figure out who to approach, and come up with case studies and presentations, and it's going to take a while. So, but hopefully in a couple of years or so, we'll be able to say, now there's a new shuttle that serves seniors, or now there's this new service that serves seniors. And I think that would be awesome for us to have that kind of an impact on the community and at least get the ball rolling. So with that, I just wanted to know if any of you who were able to attend had comments or questions, and if there are people who are willing to maybe serve on this subcommittee, and kind of where we are with all that.
So I was present, and I would like to serve on the subcommittee. There is an issue, and that is that I'm one of the 3 people who's coming up for I'm not sure I'll be on the committee, but if I am, I attended the meeting, and I was extraordinarily impressed by the number and diversity of people who were there, by the efficiency with which you, Commissioner Onan, and Minka, and and Mary, how smoothly it went, given the numbers of people. And I think that lots and lots of people were inspired and energized by the fact that they were there.
Thank you. Thank you for that input. Commissioner Chen?
When I look at the minutes, I was, impressed. The people, how do you get those people? How did we get all those people? Right.
I think it was a lot of good brainstorming between the chair and the vice chair and Mary and myself. And then I think those attendees sending on to others. And then I think some of the interesting outliers, I think at one point we got some interesting people there. And at one point, I'm on this listserv for the Silicon Valley Healthy Aging Coalition, and I never have gone to any of their events. And I sent it to the woman. I said, well, why don't you just send it to your people in Palo Alto? And I think after we sent that out, we probably got another 10 to 15, and got some people that we wouldn't have gotten. And there were some, I felt like a little more for-profit-y. I mean, there was, the typical push the button if you fall type of thing. But I think, regardless of that, I think each of those people there and they brought a really interesting perspective and had a good knowledge base of different types of seniors and their needs. So I think all of it together proved for an even better event than we could have planned outside of the groups we would have thought. So that part of it was happenstance and part of it was really good planning.
Yeah, I think, by the people who attended the meeting, I wasn't there, I just look at the minutes, and then their comments, their contribution. I think this topic is so important. So it's for us to work on.
And so are you volunteering to be on the committee?
I wasn't at the meeting, by the way.
That doesn't mean you can't volunteer to be on the committee.
Well, I have something other I have, by the way, I'm one of the 3 persons. Do you?
Oh, that's right. Okay, so Commissioner Stone, are you volunteering?
I'm enthusiastically volunteering. And I think because that summit was, I thought, incredible. It was amazing seeing all of these different organizations show up. And my favorite part was everyone being able to see that there are so many services throughout the city and seeing and being able to see various organizations not realize that they had potential partnerships. And so I want to thank as well Mary and Minka and Chair Onan for putting that together, because I think that just blew everyone's expectations away. It was an incredible event. And yes, I do want to be on the subcommittee.
Okay, great. Well, I think I would like to serve as well, because I'd like to kind of see it through what we started and see how far we can take this. We also got some feedback that people would like to have this kind of event more often. So this may be an annual or every couple of years type of event that the HRC would sponsor. So that would be something I would just welcome, all of you to partner with me on planning the next.
I just wanted to make a comment too. I am not enthusiastically volunteering. However, I did want to express my my amazement at the, as Commissioner Stone was saying, the diversity of people, the sheer number of people, and just the dedication of each person in the room who was really wanted to see things get moving. So it was, for a first attempt, it was unbelievable.
Thank you so much. I do feel like we had great energy in the room, and I got such nice feedback also from our city council members who attended. I think that there's kind of a ripeness right now around, maybe paying more attention to human services in Palo Alto and more attention to senior issues. So I think this could be a really good time for us to take the lead on kind of driving some things forward. And I'm really, really glad that so many of you are willing to step up and help. I think that would be great. So let's go ahead with the 3 of us, and we'll figure out when to kick off our subcommittee and start tackling some issues. As I said, it's going to be kind of a long-term process and figuring out where we want to concentrate, because there are so many issues that we could potentially explore, and we're going to have to kind of narrow it down, which is going to be hard. But I think there were some key things that came up over and over again that we can probably direct our attention to. So thank you all, and thank you, those of you who were able to come. Mehdi, you can come next time. Okay, and now on to our next item, which is not quite as happy news, which is our Civility Roundtable. So as you know, I was very struck by the Mountain View HRC Civility Roundtables, and I was hoping that we would kind of do a cut and paste and do something really similar to what they do here in Palo Alto. But the complexities of trying to plan, execute, and publicize a community event kind of got to be too much, and we canceled it. And I'm not feeling great about that, but I felt like that was probably the best thing to do, given that we were running out of time. And I know staff
I just
also
wanted to
has some
piggyback
perspective.
on that. I think Chair Onan has some feelings of sadness, as do staff. But I think what I wanted to add is the HRC is just running off a big high with the Senior Summit. There was a lot of enthusiasm in the room. It was a great effort by the HRC. I shared with Chair Onan that my supervisor was at the council meeting when Councilmember Burt talked about the Senior Summit, and he and Mayor Holman were there with nothing but praise for the HRC, with nothing but praise for Chair Onan, who stepped in and moderated the meeting and did such a fine job. And it took a lot of work. I mean, I did special events with the city for years, and Mary's been my partner. Special events are a lot of work. I think people think, oh, there's a meeting full of people. Oh, you're going to have a community meeting. It's a lot of work. And I think with the forum that we were going to have just being a month after the Senior Summit, being in the season of a lot of city meetings, the State of the City is coming up next week, that we just felt like, we wanted this other event to be as much of a success as possible. And we had, Chair Onan recruited a great panel of speakers, and I think we really wanted to respect their time in knowing that we wanted to have this event when we felt like we could replicate the success we had with the Senior Summit as far as attendance. You just don't get 100 people in the room. So in respect, I think, to our panelists, it was a hard decision, but the decision was made to postpone it. And I think it's a very ripe topic for the community. And I think, you all have the opportunity just to pick up the mantle again when there's a subcommittee surrounding Chair Onan in helping to work on this event. So I just wanted to kind of lift up Chair Onan after a feeling of frustration about this, and not seeing it so much as, something as a failure. It's not. It's really, in the end, making a very wise decision of hosting an event when you know that it will meet its intended outcomes.
Thank you, Minka. So I want to really put it to my fellow commissioners. Do we want to tackle this again? And this time someone else is going to have to take the lead. This time I'm getting kind of worn out. There were a couple other topics for civility roundtables that we had kicked around. Commissioner Savage had mentioned doing one on the police. I think Commissioner Al-Hassani thought about doing one about homelessness or homeless vets. And Commissioner Chen had thought about doing one maybe on diversity in our community. So I don't know if one of you is interested in maybe working toward a spring or a summer event with some long lead time. And of course I could help, staff would help. We might have to look at the Mountain View model a little more carefully. My understanding is they kind of outsource a lot of their planning to Project Sentinel, who helps round up their panelists, think of their questions, and moderate their roundtable. And then they're not quite as hands-on as I was hoping. I was trying to create a real Palo Alto event in a really hands-on way, so it may be I bit off more than I could chew, but so that's an option. We could also think about partnering with another agency, partnering with the PTA, the school board, partnering with the police department, however we want to do it. And I think we should probably learn from this not so great outcome that we can't do all the heavy lifting by ourselves. I mean, to engage the community and get people in the room, I think you have to have channels, and we can't really do all this by ourselves as a volunteer organization. So you don't have to decide tonight, but I think if you think over and maybe if you have ambitions to help pull off a community event.
The other thing I'm thinking about is it pays us for us to do a little planning. See, are we doing like 1 or 2 a year, at what time? Just think ahead of time. So so we could plan the issue a lot better, because this is not an easy issue. We involve a lot of people,
Right.
involves the partnership, involves community. If we don't do it ahead of time, we may not able to do a good job
Right.
at the end. So, like, we have those ideas. We don't have to have them all in 1 year.
No, that's so true. I was thinking it'd be nice if we raised the HRC profile a little bit and did maybe 2 or 3 events a year So we've done the senior summit, but that wasn't so much a community event as it was a agency event. I'd like to do something that's a little more open, at least once this year. So if you guys who were interested in putting on a civility roundtable, or if you want to do a different format for the event, that's totally fine as well. But I'd love to hear ideas either tonight or in the future, and maybe we can start putting something together, and a group of us can maybe all work together on that. Yes, Commissioner Moore?
You know, it struck me now, I'm sure you've thought about this, or if there's some reason why, but I mean, why another possibility, right, would be to segue or to have a combination of senior as well as one of these topics, like seniors and housing, or seniors and, you know, the upcoming, you know, the what planning there's going to be, but to make one of these senior summits combined with, perhaps, with another's, and therefore to use the knowledge that came from the summit, which had to do with agencies, but to try to open it up more to a community conversation.
Well, it has to be a topic that I think will really garner community interest. So senior housing would garner some interest among seniors, but again, we need to make sure it's broad so that, you know, we can partner with people and agencies throughout the community and bring a lot of people in, because we want diversity and we want various viewpoints. The point of a roundtable is to get kind of opposing and divergent viewpoints and get everyone to listen to everybody else, because that kind of civil discourse has been very lacking in Palo Alto for some time, and we tend to get very polarized around issues. So, I mean, I'm passionate about senior issues as well. I'm not sure how we could sell that as a community event.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking so much about making it the topic to be seniors, but to take something like diversity, you know, to try to combine it with a font of knowledge that we've already gained. There is interest, obviously, in this town in terms of affordability, housing, and the aging population. So just to see if there's a way to segue that in is all I thought.
Right.
In terms of garnishing information that we already obtained.
So yeah, so we have some things we can think about, and just encourage my fellow commissioners to give this a little bit of thought, and then see if someone's willing to step up and take the lead on that sometime this year. It doesn't have to be on any particular timetable. And then let's figure out resources and what we can do, and then hopefully this next time we'll be able to get off the ground. I think that would be awesome. Okay, so unless there's any other questions or comments, let's move on to our study session preparation with council. So just to refresh, we normally meet with council in the fall. This fall was a little bit of a weird time because elections were coming up and the constitution of the council was changing. We were in the middle of a whole bunch of other things, and so we delayed, and then we got delayed out a little bit more. So now we're into March, but our study session is coming up. And normally what leadership does is kind of review with council things that we've accomplished over the last year or two, what our goals and priorities are coming up. And then we often have kind of a conversation with council about, are there areas they want us to tackle? Are there things they'd like to know from us? And this year, we've done actually quite a bit, so I think that'll be interesting. We've invited council to witness some of the things we've done, so I think they're already somewhat informed. We've got some things coming up that I think will be interesting for them to learn about. And we also, I think, want to, I'm on the HISRAP subcommittee, so I think we also want to take the opportunity to kind of preview some of the things that we're going to be going to finance and possibly the policy and services subcommittee of council about, which involves increasing funding for human services in Palo Alto and giving them some comparative data that we gathered on other communities that might help inform their decision about whether and how much to increase funding, and also the whole idea that Councilmember Burt proposed about the rainy day fund for things like HISRAP funding. So I'm not sure, though, if there are other things that we want to focus on, or just kind of wanted to get a temperature read from the rest of the commission. You know, this is kind of a rare opportunity that we have to meet with council. We don't get to spend a lot of time with them. So are there things that you really think strongly that we should pursue at that time while we have them all in the room together?
Is there going to be like a...
Is it on?
Sorry. Is there going to be a staff report that goes to them beforehand that kind of outlines stuff that we've done, as well as like stuff we want to do this year, and like maybe some things that came out of the offsite we did?
Usually, and the last time what it was just a very general agenda, and then there was a PowerPoint that the HRC put together and presented it to them. So it's not, in my history with the HRC, it's not been an extended staff report that has gone to them. I think sometimes there's these, it's been more oral at the meeting. So they would get a copy of a PowerPoint ahead of time. That's really up to the HRC, but if you wanted to do that, that would have to happen pretty soon, because with the extended periods ahead of time, staff reports used to be released the Thursday before the Monday meeting. Now it's a week prior to that, so that means I would have to have it done. You'd have to have it to me and have it done within the next week, which seems a little ambitious. And also the chair and the vice chair have not yet met with the mayor and the vice mayor to talk about the agenda, so that could have some influence on it as well. But I think it would be good to have a PowerPoint.
Yeah, I was planning on that, although I hope the timing works out. So as you know, Vice Chair Bacchetti has had a number of health issues, and he's had surgery again. I don't know whether he'll be available to meet with the mayor and vice mayor. We do have that meeting now set up for the 24th.
Yes.
And so I'm looking forward to that. But again, that puts us pretty close to the time of the study session, and then I'll have to scramble around and try to put a presentation together. If Commissioner Bacchetti is not available to review that, I don't know if I can tap one or two of you to maybe at least be a proofreader or look at it or give me some input. It's just hard to generate content on your own without a sounding board, and Ray was always such a wonderful one.
Would that be a good place to ask questions regarding the affordable housing?
It could. What I think that would be good for the chair to talk about with the mayor and the vice mayor. When Hillary was talking, my initial thought on that was I wouldn't want it to be as open-ended, that I would want the HRC to have done some more thought about that, to see what nexus they wanted to do, how you thought you could give value to that area, to have not just be it something as broad as senior housing, or not be as broad as tenant rights, to say, based on the information we had and people, this is something, we've taken it to one step further. We're thinking about these very specific things. You could still have that conversation tonight under the guise of this agenda item, to give more feedback to Chair Onan, to share with the mayor and the vice mayor if there are some specific areas within those two categories that you'd like her to go forward with. But my caution would just be, if you leave it so open-ended, it might come back with something that you may have not intended it to be.
Yeah, I think that we do want to look into both areas that Hillary mentioned to us, especially if there were comparable programs in other counties, especially San Mateo County, and that we could let council know that we're interested in looking into those areas and seeing if we can add value there. Again, I think that Mink is absolutely right, though, that we don't want to just open some Pandora's box and scare everybody that we're taking on way too big a role for our commission. But I think tenants' rights and senior co-housing and some of the other issues that we touched on could be good research areas. And we can always say we're going to research it, and if we have some interesting findings, we'll share them with council. I mean, we don't necessarily have to define exactly what our role will be, because we're still figuring that out.
You could also, if you wanted, just to create a subcommittee before you even get to the council study session, if you want to do some more thinking about it. Or just, like I said, have that first conversation with the mayor and the vice mayor, as an advisory body to the council. I think that would be a fine first place to start.
Okay, great.
I apologize. When is the study session?
March 9th.
March 9th. Thank you.
It's 1 week later than it was supposed to be, so it's the Monday later.
Well, then so Mika brings up a good point. So do we have some folks who are willing to start doing some research into the topic areas that Hillary mentioned, and then just get back to us on maybe some recommendations on what we might want to pursue?
I could do some of that, but I need some help. I don't know. Do I Google it? Is that a way to do it? Do you have a specific source I could dig into the literature?
I missed your first half of what you said.
Where could I find some information if I start doing research?
On senior housing or the other?
Yeah, tenants' rights, for example.
Well, I think, it's so broad.
It's broad.
I would hate to, because within tenants' rights, there's the rights that are out there. Are you talking about rent control? Are you talking about, the exponential increase in rents that some Palo Altans have faced? It's kind of
living conditions.
There's a lot of sub issues. So that's in a way my concern that would need some refinement and some discussion before some data analysis is done.
I would say start looking at neighboring counties first and see what they're doing and see if there's programs that you might want to copy.
Tenants' rights. Maybe we could start with the Peninsula Association of Realtors. Is that a good place to start? I don't know. I'm just generating the name.
Well, I think there's the Tri-County Apartment Association.
Tri-County. Right.
Well, another good source might be Project Sentinel. They're very up on a lot of the laws all around the Bay Area, and they might be able to at least point you in the direction.
Well, I can try my best, but I'm not sure. I'll seek your advice in terms of what are the sources.
Okay, we can talk.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question, which is, the concept is to have a small subcommittee to follow up on what Hillary was discussing, to see if we can come up with ideas. Is this correct? Am I correct? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, yeah, to do some just to do
in.
some research and then see more, because Hillary wasn't even sure exactly what these topics entailed, and I think we need a lot more information.
Okay. And this wouldn't necessarily be for the study session, it would just be, or is that?
No, I think at the study session, though, I'd like to be able to, accurately state that we're looking into it, we're doing research,
right.
And that we're sort of underway in that sense.
So we need to work on the subject research in a couple of weeks to come up with some data.
Exactly. Right.
It's going to be really time constrained. All right. Well, anyway.
I'm interested in.
Yeah.
I'm interested in this topic, so I'd love to join with at least Commissioner Chen.
Yeah. So this would be a lot of Googling, some phone calls, some checking. Minka might have some counterparts in other cities or counties that she can point to. I do think Project Sentinel might be a good source, just to get you started.
Could I just chime in one? To get to Minka's point that these are like very broad issues, I wonder if so. From what I understood of what you guys said about the study session, the first part will be here's the accomplishments we've done in the past year or so. My instinct is to keep it much more focused. Is at the offsite we laid out kind of our plan for the year and the priorities we were going to do. I feel like to help us narrow it, it might be better if we stick to those projects we said we're going to do and say, here's what we've done so far on these things, here's what we want to do, and then get their specific feedback on those specific issues that are much more powerful focused rather than open up broader points. Yeah.
I agree. I was just trying before to say that I'm interested in the topics that Hillary brought up. Particularly in my case, it would be the other one, the co-housing and seniors. I'm not saying that it should be honed in for the study section.
Well, no, I take Commissioner Ahasani's point. That's a good point. We did do an affordable housing learning series for a long time, and so it's not completely unnatural that we want to get into that area. I think there is a little bit of a segue where we can say we're researching some specific roles for ourselves. We don't have to get into a whole deep dive on that because it's very preliminary, obviously. We just now talked to Hillary tonight. But, just in terms of letting them know some future directions that we have, I wouldn't spend a lot of time on that. And definitely I would focus on the more concrete things that we planned at the retreat. But yeah, I definitely take your point to that. It sounds like you need to review my PowerPoint.
As part of it in the past, one thing that Mary and I will do, we look through all the minutes, we look at all the action items that the HRC did, and we compile that list for you. So that would be part of the PowerPoints. And we could very much look at the PowerPoint we did last time and update it and forward it on to the chair and see what other things we would like highlighted for this year.
The other thing I could suggest is that I know my individual commissioners have all been going to different meetings, being liaisons for different groups and so forth. It might be helpful if each of you wrote up a short paragraph or some bullet points, if there were some highlights for you personally as a commissioner of things you've done. You know, for example, Commissioner Savage has met with the chief of police. You know,
yeah, that's the other thing. You know, not to diminish the importance of housing issues, but we also, you know, have a partnership with the police department. So, you know, perhaps we can bring up some issues that, you know, regarding vehicle stops, racial bias there, taser use. There's a lot of new hires in the police. I mean, there's a multitude of issues that we can discuss with the council. So let me work on that and write up a little
I think
summary
that would be
on that.
very helpful. And we also oversee the Palo Alto mediation program. I know some of you have been liaisons to that. Maybe you could, if you've attended workshops or meetings, give me some information on that. Commissioner Chen has been working on that affordable housing report. You know, so Commissioner Moran's been working with the county. So anything that you've done in particular, even if you just want to send a couple bullets, I'll figure out a way to kind of add that into our accomplishments, things that we've done. And so everybody can have a little moment to shine, because make sure that us as a fully functional commission where everybody contributes is really important. Okay, so any other thoughts or comments on the upcoming study session? And I do hope you'll all be there. I'll ask staff to send us a reminder about the date and the time. Should be great. All right, if not, then we'll move on to reports from officials. Do we have any officials?
Well, I would like to say I see Councilmember Wolbeck here.
Yes.
Just to let the HRC know, we are doubly blessed this year. We have 2 representatives from the council. Councilmember Mark Berman is our, how I understand it, Councilmember Wolbeck, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is we have a key liaison, and then we have an alternative liaison. So, and Councilmember Wolbeck is our alternative liaison, so we are glad to have him here this evening. And I'm not sure if you want to just come up and introduce yourself to the commission. That would be wonderful.
Now, did we get 2 liaisons because they're really keeping an eye on us now?
Well, you're very subversive, so I don't know.
Hi all, good evening. My name is Corey Wolbach, and I'm the alternative liaison from the City Council to your commission for the year. I look forward to working with you.
We are delighted, just for the record.
Yes. We're so glad to see you. All right, that's awesome. And so sometimes we'll see Mark and sometimes we'll see you, which is great. Or maybe both of them, who knows. Okay, so do we have any council liaison? No, that was staff liaison reports.
So I just wanted to bring a couple things to your attention that have been sent to the HRC inbox, that because I know you get a lot of the letters. So one of the things that is coming up is on March 9th. You have been invited to a Save the Buena Vista rally. I'll forward this on to you. They're actually having a rally in front of City Hall when we're meeting with the council for your study session. So that Supervisor Joseph Midian is hosting this rally according to the email that I got, to encourage City Council to set aside funds for Buena Vista. So that, I'm not sure if that's being framed correctly, that it is from a support group that it came to me. So I will look through it a little bit more and forward that to you. I also got an email that did not get on the agenda, so it'll just have to be on the agenda next time. But I did get an email from the Mountain View HRC that they are not able to host the county breakfast, and they would be more than happy to have Palo Alto host once again. So I briefly mentioned that to the chair, I believe, in one of our conversations, and we can put that on the next agenda to discuss if that's something you want to take on again. I think it was 2 years ago, or was it only last year?
No, it was 2 years
ago. It was 2 years ago that Palo Alto hosted.
Yeah, I think that hosting the annual county breakfast is such a great opportunity for us, and to show some leadership here in Palo Alto. It's not that big a deal. Doesn't cost a lot of money just to serve some breakfast food, but we had great attendance last time, and it really helped us meet and connect with our county-wide colleagues at all the different HRCs. So I'm hoping we can do this maybe in the spring time frame. I'm thinking May, May-ish. Probably need a couple of people to volunteer to work with staff on just organizing and kind of pulling things together. But it's usually a very casual event, but very worthwhile at the same time. Okay, we'll flip over here. All right, so do we have tentative agenda items for our next meeting? So we want to talk about the breakfast. His wrap. We want to talk more about our role with affordable housing.
Yeah, I think continue to have momentum, it would be good to bring some of these major items back as soon as possible.
And probably the senior subcommittee as well.
And probably we'll have, maybe it's worth to have a discussion like post study session.
Yeah, and a post-study session debrief.
Because it'll be the, I guess, Thursday after that Monday.
All right. All right.
To create a space, I mean, to have the discussion if we need it, is it a good idea to put the civility roundtable issue on again?
Yeah, if someone has, wants to go ahead and lead one, then yeah, let's put that back on. Okay, any other items for now? All right, that is great. Then I think we are adjourned. Thank you, Minka and Mary.
Thank you.
Thank you, Corey.